Hello, everyone. Bobo here. Um, this is a very early introduction, just me poking around in a new game I got for Christmas. It's going to be very difficult to update, but we'll see what happens. Although apparently an update was already installed. It's not quite what I meant, but the game has been updated. I can view the patch notes. That's alright. I don't know what the game was like pre this patch. So basically, the options for F1 Manager 22. So a management simulation for Formula One. Race strategies and I guess team building and car development and that sort of thing. We'll see what it's all about. I can either start a new career or sign up for the newsletter, or I can make the credits roll. That seems to be about all there is to it.
Formula One, a sport that spans hearts, minds and nations, where the 20 best drivers in the world come together to take on some of the world's most historic circuits. And that legacy continues today. The 2021 championship was thrilling from start to finish, and 2022 is set to be even better. New regulations will usher in an age of pioneering changes. New driving talent alongside returning champions will be dueling it out to the bitter end. The pressure will be on the team principals in the upcoming season as they manage their drivers, their cars, and the whole team to push to victory. This is not a challenge for the faint-hearted. This is Formula One.
Well, now, I don't know if it's not a challenge for the faint-hearted. Carroll Shelby
returned to F1 in 2010, and since 2014 they've won the Constructors' Championships back-to-back every year. In 2021 they took home the Constructors' Championship once more, although they narrowly missed out on the Drivers' Championship, coming in second. Heading into 2022, Mercedes will insist on dominating the competition. Nothing less than the fastest car and the most wins will give the Silver Arrows the outcome they want to see at the end of this new season and beyond.
So I guess there's going to be a lot of little narration at the beginning of this. We also have Uncanny Valley Lewis Hamilton and George Russell here. Those are the two drivers for Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton, if you've heard of Formula One, you've probably heard of him. He is the guy that's basically in the process of rewriting record books, most of which had just gotten done being rewritten by Michael Schumacher toward the beginning of Hamilton's career. George Russell was a rookie 2 years ago. He's just had a couple of seasons at Williams and has now just moved into Mercedes. And by all accounts, of course, the 22 season is over now, but acquitted himself very well. I'm looking to see, does it mention who the L1? I could do that. Team performance. Compared to the rest of the grid, 3rd of 10, driver performance, 1st of 10, staff performance, 3rd of 10, headquarters quality. Personnel, Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Nick DeVries. There you go. You got some names there. And that their first participation in Formula One back in 1954 only spanned 2 seasons. Oh yeah, because Mercedes pulled entirely out of motorsports right around then because of the incident at Le Mans where one of their cars flew into a grandstand. And because back then they were experimenting with lightweight and, you know, they were just entering the space age with space-age materials like magnesium. The car burned and flew into shatters, and many people were killed. So they managed to win the coveted Drivers' Championship in each of them. Well, there you go. They returned to F1 in 2010, and since 2014, they've won a record-breaking 8 back-to-back Constructors' Championships, 7 of the 8 Drivers' titles. Yeah, they've done really well. They'll be set for nothing less than winning again. Yeah, so there you have it. Basically, this is the era, well, it had been the era of Mercedes in Formula One since 2014. This past season, that era got broken. Well, and I guess, 2021, they lost the Drivers' Championship. This year they lost the Drivers' Championship, and I believe the Constructors' Championship. Funny enough, my recollection of the world of Formula One in this past season is not very good because I didn't get to watch it, and I sort of brought myself back up to speed after being away for a while by watching F1 Drive to Survive, that Netflix series, which is kind of fun but doesn't actually have the races in it. Anyway, let's now look over to the next team to see who it is that's been wresting control from them of the top of the Formula One grid.
Mercedes returned to it.
Hey, no. Let's look at them.
The Red Bull team burst onto the F1 scene in 2005. And ever since 2009, they've been one of the top 3 teams in the championship. Last season ended brilliantly for them. Max Verstappen won the prestigious Drivers' Championship, and Red Bull are flying high once more. Heading into 2022 under the right leadership, Red Bull could find themselves heading up the pack once more. They'll certainly be hoping to end the season with not 1 but 2 championship trophies for their cabinet back home in Milton Keynes.
But yes, there you go. Oracle. Their team rating is, I guess, just a hair shy from maximum or whatever. Their season objective is to be the champions. Their starting budget is high. But yes, as they said, they became a fully fledged Formula One team in 2005. As these things often go, the team existed prior to then. Its previous incarnation was as a factory Formula One team for Jaguar, back when it was still under ownership of Ford. And prior to that, it was a Grand Prix team that was started, I believe, from scratch at that point by Jackie Stewart, who was a world champion in the 70s and one of the big proponents for safety measures basically existing, because they didn't before then, really. They were driving around straddling gas tanks underneath them. It was, Anyways, they secured the first podium in 2006. Saw success. Max Verstappen, the second Drivers' Champion to, be brought, or to bring that title home to the Red Bull team. The first being Sebastian Vettel, who won 4 world championships with Red Bull. So, and those are, So there you go, 4 Constructors' Championship, 4 Drivers' Championships for Vettel, and this past one, the 2001 season, for Max Verstappen, the son of Jos the Boss Verstappen, a sort of reliable journeyman Formula One driver of the 90s, but not necessarily covering himself with honor or valor or anything or accomplishments, but team performance, there you go. They have the best headquarters in the world, apparently, and are runner-up in every other field. But there you go, Max Verstappen. Sergio Perez, kind of a feel-good story to be in their car number 2, because he's, in terms of Formula One drivers, getting on in years. He's had a number of seasons, never been able to establish himself with a top team until Red Bull took a chance on him. Because they had the opportunity. They'd also sort of been cycling through second drivers for a while. And Perez is the right combination of a safe, sane, steady provider guy. he is at the point in his career where he's a good number 2 driver. He's a guy that can be depended on to just bring the car home in one piece, collect up points. Is not necessarily going to get a swelled head and try and do something stupid to the number 1 driver. So in that sense, it's a solid pairing. The thing about the Williams team, we don't need to play that introduction again, but Lewis Hamilton kind of often considered the GOAT, certainly would be in discussions for that sort of thing. George Russell, a young guy who's sort of fresh into the sport and would be probably the person that they would be looking at pinning their future to, maybe, although Hamilton obviously still in top form, so like that could be an issue. Hamilton had many years of success with Valtteri Bottas, who we will get to farther down in the grid order, who is another guy who is like, well, you know, for the most part, kind of safe, sane guy, a good second driver. He probably wouldn't like you to say that, but
Ferrari have entered Formula One every year since the World Championship began back in 1950. They still hold the most championship titles of any team. The team had a solid season in 2021, securing 3rd place in the Constructors' Championship. Ferrari are very much in it to win it. With strong leadership over the 2022 season and beyond, expect to see them fighting for those podium places. If all goes well, they'll be aiming for that top spot as the seasons progress.
And we get uncanny valley portraits of Charles Leclerc there. Actually, these are both kind of young gun drivers. They have a relatively young driver lineup. And I guess I haven't been mentioning the reserve drivers, in this case Antonio Giovinazzi. It's a guy who's had some recognition and success in junior formulas. But Charles Leclerc, what is it, Monacan? He is from Monaco. He is from the Principality of Monaco. Many Formula One drivers take up residence in Monaco. You know, they have a yacht there because many of these drivers, make millions and millions of dollars, and so they need tax shelters. And also it's a luxurious place to be for Playboy non-ex peoples. And this is going to be an issue with ever trying to record or stream anything again. Whoa. Go back.
Ferrari have entered Formula...
Nope. Sorry. Cat jumped on me and hit the button. Yes, so sorry for anybody that might have noticed a disruption in the music there. But this is the realities of having to record things with an infant that, you know, wakes up. And a almost 4 years old next week, boy who expects his dad to basically be around whenever he's awake. Yeah, Ferrari kind of is F1 in a lot of people's minds. So the idea that their objective is always to win the World Championship, sure, it makes sense, although they've been kind of out to the woods for a few years, even having the help of Sebastian Vettel, who moved there after his 4 championship-winning seasons with Red Bull. They sort of did not deliver on that sort of promise. And then even after he left, of course, they still were kind of struggling a little bit. They have a good car. That's interesting. They think their drivers are 3rd best. Staff performance, headquarters quality. Well, okay. The Ferrari factory. staff performance is first and headquarters quality is third. That's interesting. I would have expected if they were going to try and make some knock on Ferrari, it would have been on the staff, just because it is a team based out of Italy, and the majority of Formula One teams are based out of the UK. So if there was a Silicon Valley of development for Formula One cars, it would be in the UK. So the idea of trying to get top talent from that area and then having them relocate to another country where they'd have to speak another language and all the rest of that stuff, that would be their drawback, but whatever. But yeah, Charles Leclerc, they're like how they called him Car 1 and Car 2, implying there's a first and second driver, even though they're supposed to all be even. But yeah, so that's the team. They'll stop at nothing to fight their way back to the top. They're from Maranello. They are from Italy. Perhaps they will have the staffing help of Italiano Jones. He will fight for them. Let's look at McLaren.
McLaren are a cornerstone of F1, having been part of the sport since 1966 and winning numerous drivers and constructors' championships over the years. Last season, they came a respectable 4th overall, with Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris securing the only 1-2 finish of the season. The talented driver pairing of Ricciardo and Norris returns for McLaren this season, and one thing is certain, they're not going to settle until they're reigning champions once more.
So McLaren's an interesting one. McLaren, I believe, will be the second most tenured team in Formula One at this point, because they've been around since 1966. I think the third most will be Williams, and they were, I think, formed in the late 70s, I want to say. And then most everyone else is a relative newcomer in the past, decade or two. But yes, there you go. They've had many Constructors' Championship wins, Drivers' Championship wins. The last Drivers' and Constructors' Championship wins they had, I suppose, were the ones at the beginning of Lewis Hamilton's career, because Lewis Hamilton started as he didn't start that way, but he, from a very early age, has kept a close eye on by Ron Dennis himself, who at the time was team principal of McLaren. He's been since replaced by Zach Brown. Well, that's interesting. They don't have the team principals' names on there, but whatever. But you see, from Woking, United Kingdom. And their driver lineup, Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris. An interesting one, Daniel Ricciardo was a number 2 driver at Red Bull under Sebastian Vettel, and then Max Verstappen. And he wasn't necessarily strictly a number 2 driver under them, especially when Verstappen came in. He's the new guy. In theory, Ricciardo's supposed to lead the charge. Didn't quite work out that way. Very respected driver, popular driver, both with fans and among his fellow drivers, but just didn't quite accomplish everything that he would need to at Red Bull, and had sort of been adrift since. He had a couple seasons at Renault, did not get stellar results, and has been honestly not getting the results that anyone was expecting, he or the McLaren team, or anybody really at McLaren. Just finds that the car doesn't suit his style. It does suit Lando Norris very well, though, so Lando Norris was sort of getting the edge on him for a bit, which not what anybody was expecting. You have Stoffel Vandoorne there, who I believe had an F1 seat for a period of time, but is sort of trying to keep in the realm just by having his name in there. car performance, 8 of 10. So yeah, you can see that wasn't necessarily always the best car, but they had good working driver setup. And yeah, McLaren's headquarters is it's interesting they would name that as only 4th of 10, because it's a hugely impressive facility, but maybe it's just architecturally so. They're looking at the nitty-gritty of the factory or something like that. I don't know. But let's move on here to Alpine. We'll get the skinny on them.
Alpine was a new name in 2021, bringing F1 drivers Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon back into the spotlight. Alpine finished the 2021 season in 5th place in the constructors' standings, with their first race win secured by Ocon at the Hungarian Grand Prix. 2022 will be a formative season for Alpine as they return with the tried and trusted driver pairing of Alonso and Ocon. In a few years' time, with the right leadership, they could well become championship contenders.
But there you go. They are now at the point where they're starting to say, oh, look, our season objective is 4th place. So yeah, there is this little echelon. Their season objective was 6th. Their season objective was 4th. But yeah.
Mercedes returned to F1 in 2010. And since 2014, they've won the constructor...
We don't need to play all the team intros over and over. But you basically have the top 3 teams in Formula One. You have Mercedes, you have Red Bull, you have Ferrari. And Ferrari, honestly, had been sort of a distant third. And then you sort of have mixing up with everybody else. And Ferrari had been sort of a little bit out to lunch, so much so that basically any team that wasn't Red Bull or Mercedes, their realistic objective was, we might be able to make 3rd in the championship. And that was kind of all they would get to. But yeah, so Alpine here, I guess, but is sort of a redesignation of the Renault team. But let's take a look at them here. So you can see sort of we're getting into a Midland area here. But you've got Fernando Alonso, a 2-time World Drivers' Champion with Renault in an earlier sort of incarnation of the Renault team, and I guess an earlier incarnation of Fernando Alonso's in his career. Esteban Ocon, and Oscar Piastri. Where have I heard that name? Oh, I've heard that name because Oscar Piastri is now is actually going to have a seat on the grid this coming season. And fun fact, Fernando Alonso has been driving in Formula One for as long as Oscar Piastri has been alive. Fernando Alonso was a rookie in my first year as a Formula One fan in 2001, which was an amazing rookie class to look back on because the rookies were Fernando Alonso, Juan Pablo Montoya, Kimi Räikkönen, and Enrique Bernoli. But 2 guys who would go on to win world championships, 1 guy who would go on to win many Grand Prix before eventually going back to the States and achieving success there. Not so much in NASCAR, which is where he spent a number of years, but he won another Indy 500 after the one that he'd already won. But yes, Renault Alpine. So let's move on here to, this is going to be AlphaTauri, which is essentially the B team for Red Bull.
AlphaTauri have been a name in Formula One since 2020. They're renowned for being the proving ground for talented new F1 drivers. Last season, they ended in 6th overall. Driver Pierre Gasly also earned them an impressive podium finish in Baku. Heading into 2022, the team continued to develop their current driver pairing of Yuki Tsunoda and Gasly. They'll want to continue scoring regular points and begin working their way past the other midfield contenders.
But yeah, this is AlphaTauri, Scuderia AlphaTauri. You'll notice this is the other F1 team that is based in Italy. And you're like, but Bobo, if they're the B team of Red Bull, wouldn't they also be based in the UK? And I would say, yes, if the world all made sense and everything were perfect. But, this team, as teams do, because obtaining a new Formula One license is very difficult. Typically, if a team is planning on coming into the sport, what they will often do is just find a team down lower on the grid that's sort of down on its luck and put together a little takeover. And that is exactly what Red Bull did with the Minardi team. The Minardi team had the distinction of being the longest running Formula One team at the time that they went out of business with no Formula One wins. They eventually did get some wins in the guise of Scuderia Toro Rosso. I get that, Team Red Bull in Italian. With the aforementioned Sebastian Vettel and I think Gasly, maybe in the last year of, was it Gasly that did? Who was it? But yeah, then Yuki Tsunoda. I'll be honest, I never heard of Liam Lawson. Perhaps he is a great-great-grandfather of future person Mike Lawson, pivotal character in Fallout New Vegas. But you see here, yeah, we're starting to get on the low end of the car driver headquarters staff. What's their goal? Their goal is to be sixth. Their goal is basically they want to not lose ground. They want to not get any worse. From there, we move on to Aston Martin.
2021 was Aston Martin's first full season in Formula One. They roared onto the scene with Sebastian Vettel, the legendary four-time world champion, in one of those coveted driving seats. Despite some teething problems in testing, Aston Martin gave a solid showing and finished the season in 7th place overall. Heading into 2022 with Lance Stroll and Vettel behind the wheel, Aston Martin have the potential to become regular podium contenders. But it's going to take strong leadership and shrewd investment to get them there.
Yeah, so Aston Martin. As I said, it was their second year or first year in Formula One. But as I say, none of these are really new teams. They are a new cover on an old team. That team raced as Racing Point for a couple of years. Because they essentially just needed to come up with a different name. Because the team in its prior incarnation, which was as Force India, the owner of the team went into receivership as the owner of the team was under investigation for financial wrongdoing in India, and was essentially hiding out in the UK. But eventually the assets of the team were seized, and they were taken by Lawrence Stroll. What a coincidence, you say. The number 2 driver's name is Lance Stroll. Yeah, that's no coincidence. The man who invested in Racing Point is a very, very, very wealthy man who had a son who was an aspiring race car driver. And so these things have happened. As it turns out, as far as drivers that have gotten where they are out of money or wealth or position, Lance Stroll's done relatively well. But there's no doubt that that is a potentially complicating factor. I don't know whether or not it would be something they would simulate in the game, but that, like, if you were to become the team principal of this team and then say, yeah, I want to fire Lance Stroll, I have to imagine that the ownership of the team would not do it and then fire you. So I don't know whether or not that would be simulated in the game. Another minor point about the team, aside from the fact that I do love a nice green car, is that this team actually traces its roots back to the old Jordan Formula One team of the 90s and 2000s that raced under the Irish flag from owner Eddie Jordan. Well, no, I guess they raced under, because I guess they were a UK manufacturer because they're based out of Silverstone, but had Irish ownership from Eddie Jordan, and was my favorite underdog F1 team of all time, I suppose. But yeah. So in that sense, have kind of a soft spot for this one. I've been wondering, what team would I go with if I were to start up a campaign of this, which, I mean, I bought the game. I'm probably going to start up a campaign of it. Seems like it would be dull to just start as a top team and then just, you got to win all the time. Like, it seems like it would be more fun to start with a lower level team and try and develop it. Speaking of lower level teams, this is one that is sad to consider a lower level team, but I guess is now. I remember when I started watching, they were winning on the regs. Things were exciting. That whole thing about Juan Pablo Montoya I was talking about, he was winning races with this team. That being Williams.
Williams is a legendary name in F1, winning 9 Constructors' Championships in their heyday. The Williams family sold the team in 2020, and the 2021 season saw them fighting well from start to end. They finished 8th overall, thanks to some incredible performances by George Russell in his last year as a Williams driver. In 2022, Williams have Nicholas Latifi and new signing Alex Albon, returning to F1 after a year away to make up their driver team. The pressure is on for them to up their performance this season and push their way back towards those midfield places.
But yeah, you see here, their starting balance is low, and that is a thing. Well, what was the starting balance that they have? They have a high starting balance, which is interesting. They have a medium one, but yes, basically, yeah, I mean, they became a quote-unquote factory team, but it's still basically being funded by Lawrence Stroll. But he is still wealthy enough to get them a decent amount of money. The ownership of this team, it's an investment group that managed to get it away for a song from the Williams family, who were not incredibly wealthy, but they had an incredible racing pedigree. They were able to keep themselves afloat by actually winning races and doing things like that. Sir Frank Williams himself had to sort of leave regular operations of the team a number of years ago, and he passed away not long back. His daughter was running the team for a number of years, but it was 1978. I was thinking it was 77. This was all slightly before I was born, so. What you see there, Constructors' Championship wins 9, Drivers' Championship wins 7. Yes, they've all done very well, but it seems like a long time since then, and it is a long time since then. This is probably the single largest fall from grace of a major team. But maybe they can do something about it. There's Nicholas Latifi, Alex Albon, as were mentioned. And yeah, I don't know who Jack Aitken is. Alex Albon, am I remembering right? He had a cup of coffee at Red Bull. But he was part of the sort of Red Bull development program He was at AlphaTauri for a while, and then got moved up, and then moved back again. There's a period of time, basically, where...
The Red Bull team burst onto the F1's...
Right. So Sergio Perez is there now. There's basically a while there where they're trying to figure out who could fill in as a number 2 for Max Verstappen. They tried Pierre Gasly. He didn't work out. They moved Alex Albon into the position. I could be getting this entirely wrong, but... yeah. Then Albon sort of ended up out of the game of musical chairs once they decided to move Sergio Perez in there. Now, what about Alfa Romeo? That's a fun name, too. I'm torn about this because I have a sentimental spot for the team of... yeah, like there's all these little bottom teams pull at your heartstrings a little bit. Aston Martin, just the sort of the roots of the Jordan team there. Although they have a 4-time world champion in their driver lineup, it makes it hard to think of them as an underdog. But of course, that's only one piece of a larger puzzle. It's a strong piece, and I don't necessarily know if this will simulate it, but Vettel decided to retire. Like, as of 2023, he's not on the grid. He is not part of that team. But Williams, yeah, just as far as they've got a low budget. They've had difficulties left, right, and center. They've had to make hard decisions about, long-time staff that they've had to figure out to let go, and people that they've had to try and get back, and all sorts of troubles, all sorts of troubles and worries. They got a low budget, just as far as like a challenge of trying to restore a very storied name in Formula One back to glory. That's kind of a good story, isn't it? But what about Alfa Romeo? What's their story? What's their deal?
Alfa Romeo boast an impressive Formula One history, dating right back to 1950 when they won the very first Drivers' World Championship. However, 2021 saw them finish in 9th overall, with no podium finishes to their name. The team usher in 2022 with a brand new driver lineup. They're joined by F1's first ever Chinese race driver, Zhou, as well as veteran Valtteri Bottas, as they build their way back to becoming regular point scorers.
So there you go. Alfa Romeo has a low budget? What? Well, this is one of those things. Is Alfa Romeo actually is it actually an Alfa Romeo factory? Or is it a Formula One team that is buying engines and then putting Alfa Romeo's name on them? Hey. So yes, the car performance 4th out of 10. Well, that's a pretty good car, honestly. Driver performance 6th out of 10. This seems like they've got pretty good stuff going on. They don't have a great headquarters or great staff, apparently. But yeah, I was going to say, it's been a long time since Alfa Romeo was in F1 until they got back in 2019. And yes, based in Hinwil, Switzerland, which is, of course, where we all know Alfa Romeo is from, except not, right? Again, this is a Formula One team that is not what it initially appears to be. This was the Swiss-based Sauber F1 team, and basically, naming rights, Alfa Romeo took them. The actual team and facilities itself. And this is another one where they say the headquarters quality is 9th of 10, which is interesting because Sauber, and I guess, this is one of those things. In the early 2000s, they had one of the most impressive wind tunnels in Formula One in the early 2000s, and they were making cars that were punching above their weight a little bit. but I guess that was 20 years ago. So, maybe that's what I'm thinking. My head's stuck back there. Valtteri Bottas. Remember we talked about him a little bit earlier. He was a number 2 driver to Lewis Hamilton for a number of years. Probably his most successful teammate in terms of teammates, with, of course, the exception of, and this music is sort of just going in my head and it's making it a little difficult for me to concentrate. Yeah, sorry. And he was at Williams for a while, but I guess he still has a job in F1. But Robert Kubica is still there. That's lovely. Robert Kubica, a Polish Formula One driver who looked to be a big name, not a big name, but looked to be on a path to potential championship somewhere down the line if all his cards lined up, and had an incredibly debilitating rally car accident. He was just racing in a rally car during the off season and had a terrible accident where basically a metal Armco barrier pierced the car, inside the car, seriously effed up the dude's hand. He was in physical therapy for years. That he was able to be in an F1 car again and driving it was considered a big milestone, a big achievement. But lovely to see that he's still out there. Coincidentally, he had another fairly serious F1 accident before that, and had to be replaced for one race, the 2007 United States Grand Prix, the last F1 race I ever went to in person. I was excited to see Robert Kubica. Then he had this injury, and he was replaced by a brand new driver, Sebastian Vettel. So I got to see his first ever Formula One race instead of getting to see Robert Kubica, who I was excited to go see. Speaking of Americans like me and the U.S. Grand Prix, I guess, what's going on with the Haas Formula One team?
Haas joined F1 back in 2016, and they've had a good start to their team career, peaking at 5th place in 2018. Last season, they finished 10th, but they spent a lot of time and focus on designing their car for 2022 and strategizing for the future. Going into the 2022 season, Haas hope to have a strong car design under their belts. Coupled with hungry drivers, an ambitious team, and strong leadership, they'll be pushing their performance and fighting their way back to the midfield.
So interesting. Their long-term objective is to get to podium. Theirs is to get to podium. Williams' long-term, they just want to be able to score points again. Same for Aston Martin. But, you see that starting balance low, no joke. Gunther Steiner, the team principal over at Haas, goes around hat in hand a bunch of the time. One of the reasons for, let's see here. Oh yeah, Kannapolis, USA. Kannapolis is in North Carolina, folks. Haas, that name Haas, you might recognize if you are an American or a NASCAR fan. It's that same Haas, Gene Haas, that is one half of the Stewart-Haas NASCAR team with Tony Stewart. First All-American team in F1 for 30 years, yep. 21 Drivers' Championship finished 19th. So basically, in 2021, they kind of punted. So their drivers were the two drivers at the bottom. Their championship finish was at the bottom. They don't have any championships today. What are you talking about? 7th out of 10, 10 out of 10, 5th out of 10, 10th out of 10. They're not looking great. They're not looking great. Pietro Fittipaldi. I think maybe the nephew of Emerson Fittipaldi. I don't know if it's the direct son, but I do believe there's a familial relationship between Pietro Fittipaldi and one-time champ Emerson Fittipaldi. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, this entire driver lineup is legacies because Kevin Magnussen, I believe the son of Jan Magnussen, who not a hugely successful but a moderately successful Formula One driver. Never won a championship, but managed to keep himself in the game for a number of years, which honestly is pretty good in a sport that chews up and spits out drivers. Pietro Fittipaldi, we just mentioned, and of course Mick Schumacher, the son of Michael Schumacher. You'll remember him from when we were talking about the Mercedes team. He was the man who had rewritten all the history books that now Lewis Hamilton is taking all the records that he set. But Schumacher won 7 world championships when the record before that was, I believe, 5? No, it was 4. And now, Hamilton has done that and is moving on beyond that, potentially. Now, kind of a sad situation because, what was it, maybe 2 years after he retired from Formula One, was away for 2 seasons, then came back. He retired out of the Ferrari Formula One team, which is where he won, 5 of his world championships. He won 2 with the no longer existent Benetton team, although I believe if you were to trace the roots of Benetton team forward, you would wind up with Alpine, if I'm remembering right. Do they count Alpine as having had Constructors' Championship and Drivers' Championship wins? They do, and they count each one as 2, so they must be talking about Fernando Alonso's championship wins, not Benetton. So maybe there's a disconnect there. Maybe that's just as far as they're choosing to trace back the lineage of that individual team and operation. But yes, Mick Schumacher, kind of a sad story there. He's not gotten to have his father around in a conventional sense because after Schumacher's second retirement, he suffered a severe head injury in a skiing accident and has been in, I don't know if it was a surgically induced coma initially, but is sort of, it's one of those situations where he's largely unresponsive, or was, for as long as people were getting reliable reports on it. Of course, it's a private family matter at this point. So, yeah. Anyways, so that's all very sad. What a great note to end on. But yeah, I guess this was actually just a brief run through with the of the teams. Now I'm just sitting here trying to decide what team I would want to play as, because there's definitely something to be said for, as a typical American, to bring the Stars and Stripes to glory with the Haas F1 team. Maybe I could even find an American Formula One driver in the wings to develop and build up. They have the lowest team rating, I'm going to guess, or close to it. Alfa Romeo is kind of fun. I don't necessarily have a strong connection to that team. It's pretty livery though. Williams, again, the story of how great this team once was and how far it's fallen, and building it back up to that level. Or Aston Martin, the underdog team that I loved so much as a younger fan, with just a beautiful green car that I love to look at, and their own challenges. The rest of the teams, I mean, obviously there are reasons to love all of these teams, but just in terms of like where you're going at the bottom, I'm sort of torn between Aston Martin, Williams, and Haas. Nothing against Alfa Romeo. I like Alfa Romeos. They seem like pretty neat cars, but I just don't have the same strong connection to that team. Anyhow, I'm going to end this video there. I don't know what I'm going to do now, because, like, do I post this? I don't know whether or not I'm going to be able to play this game. I don't know whether or not I'm going to be able to enjoy this game going forward. But the battery in this headset is getting low, and it's getting near midnight, so I should probably just say goodnight to all of you as well. But this has been... Look at the weird teams and stuff in F1 Manager 22. Then after this, I would set career settings. Continue to start a new game. Wait, no, go back.
Alfa Romeo boasting it.
No, I don't need to talk to you about that. Anyways, yeah, I'll go ahead and stop it there, because what else am I going to do? I've yammered on long enough. If you enjoy my yammering, this was a great video. If you don't enjoy my yammering, you probably haven't gotten to this point of the video. So, thanks for watching, and talk to all of you another time. Bye now.